Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, as government ministries lay out their plans to achieve reunification with North Korea, President Park Geun-hye urges her ministers to boost the quality of inter-Korean exchanges. Korea and Japan hold high-level talks on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. Korean officials say the talks were meaningful and constructive. Plus, responding to the terror attacks in Paris, the European Union announces plans to engage Muslim nations in counter-terror projects. Daybreak begins now. Hello, and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, January 20th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. We begin with a preview of what Seoul's foreign and North Korea-related policies are going to look like this year. On Monday, related government bodies presented their blueprint for 2015 to President Park Geun-hye. Top of their agenda was ways to achieve a peaceful reunification with the North. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
In the 70th year after the division of the Korean peninsula, the Unification Ministry wants to launch a new era of reunification. Various events with North Korea are part of the plan, including a test run of a railway across the inter-Korean border around Liberation Day in August. The train will take off from Seoul and make stops at the North Korean border town of Kaesong and the capital Pyongyang before its final stop at Sinuiju. Sound unrealistic? Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae says the ministry has all the data it needs.
There will need to be discussions between South and North Korea on the issue, but once North Korea agrees, I think the project won't be hard to carry out.
In its talks with the North, South Korea is seeking fundamental solutions to humanitarian issues like reunions for war-separated families. It's also willing to discuss more aid to Pyongyang. The idea includes the construction of multiple farm complexes in North Korea and training for its workers.
We are planning to extend development assistance to North Korea to help it build the groundwork for autogenic capability.
To ensure these reunification efforts will continue past the current administration, the government plans to introduce new legislation. This includes training personnel to prepare for reunification and designating officials at each government ministry. But most of these plans need the cooperation of North Korea, which is still sitting on South Korea's month-old offer for talks. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And in response to those plans, President Park Geun-hye says it's time for the two Koreas to start discussing preparations for a peaceful unification. Speaking at the joint briefing, the South Korean leaders said that to have any form of dialogue, there have to be the right conditions that will make North Korea respond and begin negotiations. As Sang-hee just mentioned in her last report there, Pyongyang has yet to answer Seoul's proposal for talks on inter-Korean issues, including the resumption of reunions for families separated since the Korean War. High-level North Korean officials and a handful of former US diplomats wrapped up their two-day meeting in Singapore on Monday, but the talks centering around Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions ended without too much progress. Speaking to reporters after the meeting, North Korea's chief nuclear negotiator Lee Yong-ho, who you can see there, said that in order to have peace on the Korean peninsula, South Korea and the US need to stop their joint military drills, which Pyongyang views as preparations for war. Seoul and Washington maintain the annual exercises are defensive in nature and will go ahead in March as planned. During the two-day talks, North Korea reportedly indicated a willingness to rejoin the long-stalled six-party talks, but rejected US demands to show concrete steps towards denuclearization. The South Korean military says it's going to use more advanced technology to enhance its defense posture. The move is part of Seoul's plan to mount a so-called creative national defense against North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Korea's defense ministry has laid out its plans for the year. with a focus on building a creative national defense. As part of the plan, the ministry plans to employ advanced technology to enhance its military capabilities and gain an edge over North Korea. The list of high-tech weaponry includes unmanned surface vehicles that will be capable of conducting offshore missions without jeopardizing the lives of military personnel. There are also plans to use robotics to boost surveillance capabilities on the front lines and equip soldiers with state-of-the-art gear. The ministry is seeking ways to better deal with Pyongyang's nuclear weapons development programs and to better fight North Korean troops, which outnumber the South roughly 2-1. Meanwhile, the ministry reiterated that it will proceed with a large-scale military exercise with the U.S. in March, despite the North's offer to suspend nuclear tests if the Allies halt the drill. The North sees the exercise as a rehearsal for war, while Korea and the U.S. say it is defensive in nature. During this year's drill, the two allies plan to strengthen their joint defense posture and set up a comprehensive plan to counter the communist regime's chemical and biological weaponry. The ministry said that maintaining a strong military posture of readiness guarantees a strong foundation for national defense and sets up a basis for a peaceful unification. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, despite the numerous challenges and uncertainties facing South Korean firms operating the joint Kaesong industrial complex, numbers show that businesses there, boosted by low overheads and cheap labour, are actually doing really well. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Listed South Korean firms with operations at the Kaesong industrial complex have been faring well despite inter-Korean relations blowing hot and cold over the years. According to the Corporate Association of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, the company's average sales rose nearly 120% between 2005 and 2013. Their operating profits also jumped more than 140% over the same period. This translates into a compound annual growth rate of about 10% in terms of sales and 12% in operating profit. South Korean firms entered the Kaesong Industrial Complex in 2004, and full operations began in December that year when it started production. The firms tend to suffer when tensions are high on the Korean peninsula, and they were hit the hardest in 2013 when North Korea unilaterally shut down the complex for 5 months. However, despite such drawbacks, experts say cheap labor is an advantage that boosts the firm's competitiveness. And with half of the list of firms in the complex also logging double-digit growth rates in net profits, their performances stand out from the rest of the South Korean corporate sector. Recent data shows Korean companies reported an average of $5.5 of net profits on every $100 of sales last year. That's below the global average of $7.9. Korean firms' profitability also fell by nearly 3 percentage points in the past 3 years, the second worst corporate showing among 25 major economies. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, more details are emerging about what evidence the US government had when it blamed North Korea for the massive hacking attack on Sony Pictures. The New York Times reports a top-secret US cyber operation led by the National Security Agency had penetrated deep into North Korea's computer systems some time before the cyber attack on Sony, with the help of South Korea and other US allies. The paper quotes officials who say malware was placed into Pyongyang's computer systems so the NSA could track networks and computers used by North Korean hackers. Before the Sony case, the United States had never directly accused another country of launching a cyber attack on it. Senior military officials say the evidence presented to President Barack Obama left him in, quote, no doubt that Pyongyang was responsible. North Korea continues to deny it was involved. Now, South Korea has called the 6th round of talks with Japan on Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women meaningful and constructive. This following a 3-hour meeting in Tokyo on Monday between Korea's chief delegate Lee Sang-dok and his Japanese counterpart Junichi Ihara. Speaking to reporters after the talks, Lee said the talks went smoothly and the two sides will continue to make efforts to reach a solution. He added that he couldn't really say too much given that the talks are supposed to be confidential, but it appears that no significant breakthrough was made during this round of talks. Korea wants a sincere apology from Japan and compensation for the victims, but Tokyo says the issue was dealt with in a bilateral treaty signed all the way back in 1965. The meeting comes as Korea and Japan are trying, at least, to improve their very frosty relations, as this year marks the 50th anniversary of the normalization of their bilateral relations.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
The former vice president of Korean Air was in court on Monday, facing a handful of charges over the so-called nut rage incident. Jo Hyun-ha's lawyers denied charges that their client had violated aviation law. Connie Lee has more.
Jo Hyun-ha faced a judge on Monday at a Seoul court on her first day of trial. And according to her lawyers, she's not guilty for most of the charges. At the hearing, Cho's lawyers said their defendant is deeply sorry about what happened to passengers, attendants, and pilots on board the flight when the alleged incident took place. But they added most of the charges against Cho are not true or have been exaggerated, citing lack of evidence and conflicting testimonies of witnesses. As her lawyer spoke, Cho declined to make any comments, even when invited to speak by the judge. The 40-year-old former vice president of Korean Air faces a slew of charges, including assault on a plane, changing flight plans, and obstructing government investigation. If convicted, Cho can face a maximum 10 years in jail. This high-profile case broke headlines last December when Cho, on a flight from New York to Seoul, allegedly became enraged and abusive after she was served macadamia nuts in a bag instead of on a plate. Cho is believed to have ordered the Korean Air jet to return to the gate just before takeoff in order to deplane the senior flight attendant over the first-class service mistake. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's mobile advertising market is expected to top $925 million this year, or 1/3 of the nation's total online advertising market. According to a report by local media firm DMC Media, the mobile advertising market will grow 27% compared to last year due to the growing number of smartphone users in the country. The report also reveals that more mobile advertisements will be in the form of animation, videos, and even real-time bidding this year. In addition, Korea's total online advertising market is expected to grow 9% this year, topping $2.8 billion. Now, moving on to the second report in our 5-part series on startups here in Korea. And today we are going to focus on one specific startup that has broken new ground, and we're going to hear about the secret behind its great success. With this report, here's our Kim Ji-yeon.
A number of apps have popped up in recent years, enabling users to order food without ever making a phone call. One of these is 배달민족 by a startup company called Ua Brothers, and it's getting a lot of attention. The app, launched in 2010, is known for its user-friendly mobile platform. Commercial for the app, which looks like a movie trailer, went viral on social networking sites and YouTube.
아직도 전단지가 내가 다 정리해줄게.
배달민족 currently dominates the app-based food delivery sector, estimated to be worth 1 trillion Korean won or $928 million. Over 5 million deliveries were made through the app last month alone, with 150,000 restaurants participating nationwide. But what makes this company stand out is its potential, fueled by a major investment from Goldman Sachs.
I think the $36 million investment from Goldman Sachs shows a level of confidence, not just in 배달민족, but the Seoul startup ecosystem. There's a great level of talent. There are wonderful universities here pumping out incredibly educated students. There is investment coming in. And then the most important thing, there's drive and hunger to want to build.
What's the secret behind getting so much attention? What's the secret behind your success?
Sure. I think one of the best things about this company is that because of the structure that we have, anybody at any level can voice their opinion, and their opinion is extremely valuable.
This flat structure helps to better cater to consumer trends with the timely execution of ideas. It also sets the company apart from most Korean firms and startups that follow a top-down structure. So what's next? It plans to broaden its takeout focus to include all types of restaurants. The company also wants to go global. It has already partnered up with Line, a mobile messaging app owned by Korea's largest portal Naver, to expand into Japan. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Tuesday morning from Seoul, Korea. For that, we turn over to Eunice Kim, standing by for us, as always, at the News Center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. The European Union says it will prepare to launch anti-terror projects with Muslim-majority nations like Turkey and Arab-speaking countries in a move to more comprehensively fight terror. The announcement came after a meeting of EU foreign ministers and the Arab League chief in Brussels. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said there was a real deep awareness of the need to work together for the first time. She said the EU would kick up sharing intelligence with countries dealing with terrorism and also be more aggressive in stopping funding into terrorist networks. In key Muslim nations, she said the EU would post security attachés to develop anti-terror cooperation and also grow its Arabic language fluency to counter extremist propaganda. Meanwhile, in Chechnya, tens of thousands of people came out to protest the cover of French satirist magazine Charlie Hebdo, which featured a cartoon of a weeping prophet Mohammed on its so-called survivors issue. The region's leaders said the demonstrations were against those who insult the Muslim religion. Any pictorial depiction of the prophet is considered blasphemous by many Muslims. The state-sponsored protest was just the latest to take place in the Muslim world following those in Pakistan, Niger, and Afghanistan. Also on Monday, hundreds of Iranians marched outside the French embassy in Tehran, chanting "Death to France." Some demanded the closure of the embassy. At least 24 hostages kidnapped by Boko Haram have been freed, this according to a spokesman from the Cameroon Defense Ministry. At least 60 people were abducted in northern Cameroon in a cross-border raid on Sunday. A Defense Ministry spokesman said they were freed as militants on their way back to Nigeria were running from Cameroonian forces. He said the extremist group, which has its eyes on establishing an Islamic caliphate in the region, is believed to still be holding 30 to 60 hostages. And ahead of the start of the World Economic Forum in the Swiss ski resort of Davos tomorrow, a fresh study has been released showing a startling trend. The world's richest 1% is poised to hold more than half of the world's wealth by next year. The anti-poverty group Oxfam said its research found that the top 1% held 48% of the world's wealth in 2014, while the least well-off 80% held only 5.5%. If current trends hold up, it said the wealthiest 1% will own more than 50% of the world's wealth by 2016. Oxfam's director, calling the scale of global inequality staggering, said the organization will demand urgent action to tackle the growing divide between the rich and the poor when political and business leaders converge in Davos this week.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games, as reports have come out that the hockey venue might be moved to Seoul in order to lessen the financial burden. Now, according to reports coming out from the meetings amongst the organizers of the Winter Games, they're discussing the possibility of holding the hockey games in Seoul, which will save at least $100 million. And despite organizers going against the idea of sharing the hosting rights, moving just the hockey venue might be an option the organizers are willing to go with. Now, confidence can be great in sports, but sometimes overconfidence might hurt the team. Now, whether it be overconfidence or just confidence, Uzbekistan's head coach showed some of that in a press conference on Monday. With Uzbekistan advancing to the quarterfinals after their 3-1 win over Saudi Arabia on Sunday, they're set to face off against Group A's first-place team Korea on Thursday. And according to head coach Marjala Kasimov, he promises to win the match. And with Uzbekistan's captain Server Zeprov currently playing in the K-League Classic, he trusts the 32-year-old to lead the way to the semifinals of the 2015 Asian Cup. Now, just because the Korean national football teams had some issues with scoring doesn't mean the 2015 Asian Cup was lacking the goals. In fact, for the first time in 85 years of international football competition, has been no draws in the first 20 matches in the group stage. Now, according to the Asian Football Confederation, 20 consecutive matches without a single draw is a new record in all international competitions, including the World Cup and the Euro. And in those 20 matches, there has been 53 goals scored, with each match averaging an astonishing 2.65 goals per match. Now, when Kang Jong-ho signed a 4-year deal with the Pittsburgh Pirates over the weekend, the next question was, where is he going to play? Or his former manager isn't taking any chances and is helping him learn a new position, just in case. Now, with Kang Jong-ho currently working out with his now former team, the Nexon Heroes manager Young Kyung-yup is helping Kang in playing second base, just in case he might need to play the position with the Pittsburgh Pirates. While the former Nexon shortstop is set to compete for the shortstop position with Jordy Mercer, there is a chance that he might play second base in the long term, with reports of Neil Walker not signing an extension with the team. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good and cold morning to you. I'm Lee Ji-yeon here with your latest weather updates. So we are having a very cold start to the day, with sensory temperatures dropping to minus 10 degrees Celsius. So be sure to dress warmly before heading out. But afternoon highs will climb above these seasonal averages, picking to a touch warmer than yesterday. And morning sunshine expected, but later will be mixed with clouds, and the level of fine dust came down to the normal level, so the air quality shouldn't worry you today. And with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the afternoon highs Seoul will peak at 4, while Daegu and Gwangju top out at 8, and Busan will reach 9 this afternoon. Now, let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island will peak at 9, while Daejeon and Dokdo see a high of 6 and 5, and Mount Keungang tops out at 3, minus 3 that is, under lots of sunshine. Again, it's very cold out there, so be sure to dress extra warmly before heading out today. And let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour, so stay tuned for that. Have a great day. Goodbye.